there are more people out of work in their early 20s due to ill health than there are in their early 40s. What's up guys, Max here at Muscle World. So looking through my phone this morning and I saw the news, and the headline is more people in early 20s out of work from ill health than early 40s. That's a study results. So saying people in early 20s are more likely to be not working due to ill health than those in their early 40s, a report has found. This is radically different from the past. The Resolution Foundation, the people doing the study, said when the older you were, the more likely you were to not work due to sickness. They're saying that poor mental health among young people is on the rise. Official figures back this up, and this can hamper their education and lead to them being in lower paid jobs or unemployed. Apparently around 5% of young people are economically inactive due to ill health. And that was in 2023, and this is in the UK. And apparently this is a complete reversal from 2 decades ago, when in the early 2000s, this same age group of early 20s were the least likely to be off work due to any kind of ill health, and that people in their 40s were more likely to be ill health than to be off work due to ill health than the people in their 20s. So this got me thinking, and I look back to the early 2000s when I would have been classed in this group of young people back in those days. I look back fondly on those days, actually. Things were great. Things were, I felt happy, I was working, I was busy, I was training, I was fit. I seemed to have all this time in the day. So, and I fast forward now, when my life is so much busier, I got so much on, I got less free time, I got more worries, I got more stresses, I got more things going on. I find it interesting how this study has happened, and a lot of it is cited down to mental health. So I would want to make this video, just give my opinion on the matter, and also kind of try and reflect on whether maybe we could look at things from the early 2000s and what, maybe we were doing back in those days that contributed to us being less likely to be off work, or less likely to be suffering from ill health or mental health and things like that. Obviously this could be due to multiple reasons. There's not just going to be one factor. I mean, it probably does require some more study to look at it and then try and figure out what's actually happened or why this is happening. Mental health report and the news article does state rising mental health issues, particularly amongst young people. Could be more job insecurity, perhaps more kind of demanding work environments. Perhaps employers are demanding more from their employees. Different lifestyle factors as well. Life is different now than it was back in the early 2000s. So let's take a look at mental health. So when I look back into the early 2000s, I'm not going to be one of these people that turns around and say mental health's not a thing. I know there's a lot of people do say that. They go, mental health's not a thing. Mental health obviously is a thing. We've all got some form of mental health. But when I look back to the early 2000s, it wasn't really something that was thrown around. It was, you didn't hear people talking about it so much as you do now. I was aware of people who had mental health issues, who had problems, who were struggling. I was aware of that. And I felt down as well from time to time. There was times when I felt rough. There was times when I didn't feel particularly great. But I think it was just, that was how I dealt with it, and how people dealt with it is we just went, okay, I'm not feeling great today, might be feeling better tomorrow, depending on what's happening. Like, life is constantly changing, emotions are constantly changing. Things happen in your life that affects how you feel, positively or negatively. Whereas now it seems, and now I'm going to speak quite broadly now, it seems that people have a rough day, I've got depression. People struggling to cope with things, I've got mental health. And it seems to be a bit of an issue. Like, I remember I used to work for the emergency services, and I often get phone calls from people who wanted a response for whatever reason, and one of the things they would actually say was, I've got mental health. And they wouldn't actually say what they've been diagnosed with or anything like that, but they would just say, I've got mental health, and they would keep repeating that as a buzzword to try and get a better response. So I'm not saying they didn't have any kind of mental health issues or anything like that, but it was just the fact that they're saying, I got mental health. This is like me saying breaking my leg or whatever and saying, I got physical health. I've broken my leg. But it's just a kind of different way of looking at it. I think that it has become a bit of a buzzword. Like I said, I don't want to try and detract from it, that there are obviously people with mental health issues and people who suffer from depression and all sorts of diagnosed issues. That does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. But I just think it has become a bit of an issue that not so much mental health, but the way people are able to deal with things, and they're more quickly able to say they're suffering or struggling and just not work or whatever. But yeah, I just don't remember any of that in the early 2000s. In fact, I just remember the early 2000s being full of energy, my early 20s, full of energy, wanting to get out and do things, being motivated. I was training, I was partying, I had a good social life. Things were good. I got amazing memories from those times. So I think it's quite sad, really, that the study is showing and saying that these people are not. You know, they're so many of them are inactive or whatever. They've got ill health. One of the things that I think about, and that's majorly different, is technology. You've got a lot of social media. Social media didn't exist back then. Well, it did exist, but it wasn't as prevalent. You didn't have the smartphones. We didn't have all this technology. You constantly plugged into things. Like, I remember we used to get on a train and you'd have quiet zones, quiet cabs and things like that, and and you know, you'd have like earphones in or whatever, and that was, you know, if you had a set of earphones, that was it. Like, you know, that was your entertainment for the train journey. Otherwise, people, believe it or not, we used to get on a train, we used to talk to people. Like, the amount of interesting people I used to meet on a train was crazy. I used to get the train regularly from Cardiff to Glasgow, and so you'd be on the train for like 8 hours sometimes not even at a seat. Sometimes you'd just be standing there and you'd talk to people. I'd talk to people, or I'd get the late night sleeper train from London to Glasgow, and you'd have a couple of glasses of wine on the train and you'd speak to the person next to you, try and get a bit of head down. You might have a chat with someone else. I'd meet people and talk to people. I go on a train now and everyone's in glued down to their phone, no one's talking, no one's interacting. And I do think that is a massive contributing factor. Rise of social media, people are on their phones constantly. See them on the bus stop, I see them they're constantly on their phone. They're driving, they're on their phones. They're working, they're on their phones, constantly on their phones. In the gym, on the phone. I really do think that could be an issue. It could be a factor in this. I'm not saying we should all get rid of our phones altogether, but I do think it has contributed towards how people's work ethic is and how people's mental health is. I just think it can make you feel shit. Like, if I spend all day on my phone looking at Instagram and TikTok and God knows what else is on there, I feel like crap after a few hours. I seriously do. If I go outside and go for a walk in the woodlands or wherever, I feel absolutely great. I feel fantastic. If I go training, I feel fantastic. If I go for a swim, I feel great. If I spend time with the family, I feel great. Rise of these influencers has contributed to this as well, because we log on to things like Instagram and TikTok and we just get bombarded with just this fake nonsense of people who are just trying to sell stuff. That's all they're doing. They're trying to sell things. They're giving you this new hack or this new thing or whatever, and they're just trying to show off their perfect lives. And we had it back in the early 2000s, I guess, with regards to, you know, celebrities and stuff like that. They'd have a look at their lives, but it was more of kind of, you'd look at it more of awe than anything. But you wouldn't look at it and be like, oh, I feel crap now because I don't have that. Because these influencers, they perceive themselves to be normal. They present themselves as normal people. Maybe they are normal people, I don't know. But they do present themselves as that, and they're like, oh, we've got this amazing life. It's better than yours. But they don't show you everything else. They don't show you all the work, or they don't show you what else they've done, or they don't show you other things. They don't show you the behind the scenes. It's so easy to look at other people on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, and see these perfect lives. But you're seeing what they want you to see. It's like TV. You turn on TV, you see what the TV programs want you to see, and it's the same with social media as well. You see what that person wants you to see. Just like this, I'm showing you what I want you to see. I'm not showing you what's over there, I'm not showing you what's over there, I'm not showing you what I'm doing when the camera's off, when I'm off the camera, when the camera's turned off. You're just seeing what I want you to see. You don't see any other part of my life. Something else I want to touch upon as well is the fact that people are a lot more overweight than they were back in the early 2000s. And it's very accepted now that it's okay to be overweight. It's fine. Body shaming or whatever it was called. I don't know. I try to stay away from it all because I've always looked after myself, and I think that I want to keep myself fit and things like that and active, and I've always have done. And when I've not done that, for whatever reason, maybe I've got a couple of months or whatever where I've not been able to train for injury or whatever, I felt terrible. But when I look back to when I was in school growing up, we didn't really have any fat kids. There was no real kind of, the odd one or two, but they got bullied for being fat. They got called fat. They were laughed at. And, yeah, that's wrong. We shouldn't bully people. We shouldn't laugh at people. But when you look at TV programs, You go back now and you watch a TV program from the early 2000s, late 90s, and you won't see overweight people anywhere. And these days now, people say that's really bad. They shouldn't have done that. They were, they were pressurizing people to be a certain size, to be size 0 or whatever. I get maybe size 0 is probably a bit extreme, but it's gone the other way now, where it's like, yeah, you've got to be, you can be overweight or whatever, and it's okay. You look great. You can do whatever you want. And to be fair, if you want to do that, I don't really care if that's what you want to do. But it's the message that's being sent to people. Hang on a second. What about your health? What about exercise? All these things that do actually contribute to well-being. And the fact is, people are weaker these days than they were 20 years ago. They've done in America. They've got all sorts of data from the presidential fitness thing they do in schools. I don't know much about it, but I've read that they've got all sorts of data that children are weaker 20, 30 years ago. All sorts of studies have shown that grip strength is amongst adults and young adults is weaker than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. I just think that the way society has gone too far in promoting that it's good to not be good. Things were a lot more competitive. It was encouraged to do well. It was encouraged to win sports days, races, and it was encouraged to look after oneself, and not necessarily in like sports or losing weight or fitness. I mean, it just wasn't a thing. Being overweight wasn't really much of a concern back in those days, whereas now it kind of does feel like it's encouraged. Like, you go on, you've got a lot of plus size models and things like that, and they're promoting the size, and it's okay, and they're saying all this, but but then you've also got this generation now saying they're the most likely to have ill health. And now if you imagine in their 20s, and they're more ill than people in their 40s now, how is these 20-year-olds going to be in 20 years' time when they're in their 40s? And statistically, every other generation, that's when they've had more ill health. Unless something's done, unless they start looking after themselves, then they're going to be in very ill health when they're in their 40s as well. And I know, we never know what's around the corner. I might have ill health next week for all I know. I don't know. But the only times I've ever taken a day off sick from work was when I had pneumonia. I think I took one day off sick when I had pneumonia, and then the other times were when I had stuff that I couldn't actually go into work for. So that was COVID. I was legally not allowed to go to work because I was tested positive for COVID. I did feel a bit rough as well, but I had to isolate. And also when I've had something like diarrhea or vomiting, so whatever, I can't go to a workplace and spread that around. So those are the only 3 times I've ever phoned in sick for work in my entire life, and I don't actually recall any other times me having a day off work on the sick. In my early 20s, even though I was working like 3 jobs, and I was partying hard, and I was training, and then I never phoned in sick. I mean, there was one occasion I can remember that I was just so tired I overslept and set an alarm, and I was a little bit late for work. And then there was another time when a couple of times I've had a hangover and I've been late for work, but I always turned up. So obviously things like job insecurities, but I mean, there's always been job insecurities. Like, I remember we had the recession, early 2000s. People were losing their jobs then. There doesn't seem to be as many prospects as there used to be. I do think employers want more from their staff now. I do think that they want to literally suck everything out of you.
Costume change. Something else I also think that needs to be considered is the fact that a lot of younger people now, they recently had something quite big happen called COVID, which affected the way that they phoned in sick. So if people had COVID, then they were told not to go to work. So even in the UK anyway, it was certainly illegal it was against the law to actually go to work if you were ill. So that's probably had a bit of a knock-on effect to the fact that if people aren't feeling well now, they think, well, hang on a second, it was only a few years ago it was being encouraged to not go to work if you were sick. So that probably may have affected the younger generations who were just starting out work at that point. People who were older, who didn't grow up with their first jobs or just starting work in a pandemic. Going to work ill was just kind of the done thing. Like, I never really even thought about twice really about going to work if I was a bit ill, and I know a lot of other people don't as well. And I put that down to a lot of times I was self-employed, or employers wouldn't pay sick pay or sick leave if I was ill. So I've always had it kind of ingrained in me that even if I'm not feeling well, I got to go to work. I did go through a phase a while back where I said, oh, look, hang on, if I'm not well enough to do the things I want to do, then I'm not going to go to work. But I didn't really kind of act upon that, just because I'm so ingrained in me that I've got to go to work regardless. I just try and crack on with things rather than phoning in sick. Another thing I think about as well is that more and more these days, things are getting closed down. Like schools get closed down if there's like even a hint or a chance that there might be even a little bit of snow now. They literally just close the school down straight away. So that's just kind of showing straight away that, you know, any kind of adverse conditions or any kind of adversity, that things just get closed down, business stops or school stops, and therefore that's showing really, you know, younger people who are growing up, they don't know any other different way. They don't know that, yeah, okay, it might be a little bit more adverse or challenging, that you just got to crack on, that you can crack on through it. It's actually encouraged that if things are a little bit kind of challenging, then we just drop down and say, oh no, hang on, we got to stop and pack it in for the day and wait until it rides over and then crack on again. But really the world doesn't work like that, and we've got to have that bit of resilience. I remember when I was a kid, I don't remember the schools closing down because of snow or anything like that. Or hot days, we'd just go in, we'd be hot. You know, we didn't have aircon in the school, we'd open the window, and even then I remember being hot on hot days, being cold on cold days. Just like as an adult now, sometimes I go to work, it's hot, sometimes I go to work, it's cold. You just got to wrap up for the conditions. Well, we've just got to wrap up for the conditions. So I think it's a slightly different attitude, but I think it's also not so much their fault, but I think maybe even the generation, my generation perhaps might even be partly to blame for that, for creating that kind of culture. And a lot of it comes down to health and safety and insurance, and what if somebody has an injury, or what if somebody can't get to work, or what if somebody can't pick the parents can't come, or they've got to take time off. So it is a difficult situation. I do see it from both perspectives, and you can easily rant and rave and say, oh, it's ridiculous, the schools are closing because it's snow. But then if the schools are going to close, then it's easier to tell the parents before they drop the kids off than you know, after they've dropped the kids off and gone to work. Then they've got to come back, and then teachers have got to hang around, and the teachers might get stranded or stuck. But I mean, I've got a different attitude with that. Like I've put winter tyres on my car so that if I do get snowed, I get a shovel in my car, because I've been snowed in before and I've had to dig my way out. I've got a bit of a different attitude than what we've got in the UK. Like, you know, in Europe, they've got a slightly different attitude. Actually, you've got to have all your safety equipment in your car and be able to deal with bad conditions. Like, the attitude over there is slightly different, whereas over here it's like we're so unprepared for things. Even like motoring stuff, if you have a breakdown or you get stuck in the snow, everyone here kind of expects the emergency services or somebody to come and save them. Whereas in Europe it's a little bit different. I think probably end up getting a ticket if you end up breaking down in the snow and getting stuck and clogging up the traffic. Police will probably come and give you a ticket for not being prepared. Anyway, it's a slightly different attitude there. So anyway, that's just something I thought about. As you can see, I had a costume change because I had time to reflect on it, and I kind of changed my opinion. So what was a bit of a 20-minute rant about how shit Gen Z is slightly changed, because I thought actually maybe that's not just the case.
I definitely think there's issues with society, there's definitely problems, and I think social media, video games, two major things. Now, I'm not saying that we never played video games back in the early 2000s or whatever. I think I was just finishing playing video games as a teenager. But we didn't just used to sit in the house and play video games all the time. We'd go out, we'd play sports, we'd go out, we'd climb trees, we'd go out and ride our bikes. It was only sometimes we would play video games. But maybe I'd play with my brother. My brother was in the room next to me. We were talking, we were laughing, and we'd play it maybe a couple of hours, and we'd get up and we'd have some food, maybe go out and ride on our bikes, or whatever, do some chores, or then come back and maybe play again. We play against each other head to head. And I think we had that kind of community where we were, like, communication between the two of us, interaction between the two of us. Whereas now everyone's on their earphones and they're talking to their friends and they're not even there. So I do think that's going to have an impact. Anyway, kind of going off on a tangent there. Be interested to hear your thoughts on the issue. Let me know in the comments below. If you've stayed for the entire video, thank you so much for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Have a great day.